Michael Jordan sees a fan with a disability blocked from entering, then carries him and himself. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Michael Jordan's rise to stardom began long before his NBA career, stretching back to his childhood in Wilmington, North Carolina. Growing up in a modest household, Jordan was not the tallest or most obvious athletic prodigy, but there was something in his spirit that set him apart. His father, James Jordan Sr., was a constant source of support and inspiration, and the bond between them would become one of the most significant relationships of Michael's life. James Jordan had a deep love for sports, and it was through his encouragement that Michael began to develop a passion for basketball. At the University of North Carolina, under the guidance of Dean Smith, Michael's talents blossomed. His shot to fame came in 1982, when, as a freshman, he hit the game-winning shot in the NCAA championship against Georgetown. That moment, where he calmly sunk a jumper to give North Carolina the title, would foreshadow the clutch performances he would become known for in the NBA. It was clear from early on that Jordan had the ability to rise to any challenge, and the confidence he exuded on the court made him stand out as one of the country's most promising young players. But it wasn't just about his skills on the court. Jordan's competitive drive was unmatched. As a child, he had learned to compete not only with his peers but with his own sense of self. Growing up, Jordan wasn't immediately a standout athlete. In fact, he was famously cut from his high school varsity basketball team. While many might have let that setback define them, Jordan used it as fuel. He went home that night and vowed to work harder, to become better, and to never let a failure define his future. That very drive, to prove everyone wrong and rise above challenges, would be a cornerstone of his success later in his career. After 2 years at UNC, Jordan declared for the 1984 NBA draft. He was selected by the Chicago Bulls with the 3rd overall pick. The NBA was in a period of transition, with stars like Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar dominating the headlines, but Jordan's arrival would mark the beginning of a new chapter for the league. His combination of athleticism, scoring ability, and sheer will to win immediately made an impact. He didn't have to adjust to the speed and intensity of the NBA, he thrived in it. Jordan's rookie season was explosive, and he quickly made a name for himself as one of the most exciting players in the league. He was an immediate force on the court, averaging 28.2 points per game and winning the NBA's Rookie of the Year award. His highlight reel dunks, smooth jumper, and fiery competitiveness made him a fan favorite, and the Chicago Bulls, a team that had struggled in the years before Jordan's arrival, began to show signs of improvement. But while Jordan's individual success was clear, his team's struggles would remain. Chicago, despite having one of the most talented young players in the league, still lacked the pieces to make a real push for the championship. The next few years in Chicago saw Jordan grow not only as a player but as a leader. His scoring continued to increase, but he began to realize that to take the Bulls to the next level, he would need to elevate his teammates. Jordan's early years were marked by his overwhelming talent, but also by his tendency to carry the team almost single-handedly. Despite his individual brilliance, Chicago still faced the same limitations. Jordan, however, was not one to settle for mediocrity. He knew he had the talent, but the key to true success was building a team around him that could complement his abilities. The 1986-87 season saw Jordan elevate his game even further. He won the league scoring title, averaging an incredible 37.1 points per game, but the team's overall performance remained inconsistent. The Bulls were still struggling to break through the upper echelons of the league, and it was clear that Jordan needed help. That year, Jordan famously scored 63 points against the Boston Celtics in a playoff game, a performance that would go down as one of the greatest in NBA history. But even his extraordinary efforts weren't enough to carry the Bulls past the dominant Celtics. It was in the following years that Jordan began to understand what he needed to do to achieve the ultimate goal, winning a championship. The physicality of the league, exemplified by the Detroit Pistons and their bad boy style of play, pushed Jordan to the limits of his endurance. The Pistons, with players like Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman, embodied the toughness Jordan would need to overcome. The battles with the Pistons were not just about skill, but about mental toughness, and Jordan knew that if he was going to lead the Bulls to a championship, he would need to push through not only physical challenges but emotional ones as well. It was in these moments of adversity that Jordan's character began to shine through. After being stopped repeatedly by the Pistons' defense in the late 1980s, Jordan didn't get discouraged, he grew stronger. He took his game to a new level, working on his conditioning, his strength, and his mental focus. He wasn't content with just scoring, he wanted to be a complete player, one who could lead his team in every aspect of the game. In 1989, the Bulls made a change at head coach, bringing in Phil Jackson, whose calm demeanor and philosophical approach to the game would eventually help mold Jordan into not just a great player, but a great leader. Jackson introduced the team to the triangle offense, a system that emphasized teamwork and movement without the ball. The offensive system allowed Jordan to share the load with his teammates, and it helped the Bulls become a much more balanced team. The addition of Scottie Pippen, who became one of the best all-around players in the league, provided the perfect complement to Jordan's skills. With Pippen, the Bulls began to take shape as a true contender. In 1991, after years of struggles, the Bulls finally broke through. They reached the NBA Finals, where they faced the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson. The Lakers were the defending champions, but Jordan's Bulls were ready. The finals proved to be the moment where everything came together for Jordan. He didn't just score, he played defense, passed the ball, and most importantly, led his team with an unshakable confidence. The Bulls won the series 4-1, and Jordan was named Finals MVP, securing his first championship and beginning a new era for the NBA. That victory was more than just a title, it was a culmination of everything Jordan had worked for. It marked the beginning of a dynasty, one that would see Jordan and the Bulls dominate the 1990s. But as Jordan held that first championship trophy, he knew that his journey was far from over. This was just the beginning. He had finally reached the top, but there was no turning back. The challenge now was to maintain that level of greatness, and with his fierce competitive nature, Jordan was more than ready for what lay ahead. The 1991 championship was a breakthrough, but Michael Jordan's journey to the top was just beginning. Winning his first NBA title was a major milestone, but Jordan was hungry for more. With the victory, he not only validated his skills but also solidified his place in the NBA. Now, it was about proving that the Bulls' championship wasn't a fluke, but the start of a dynasty. The 1991-92 season marked the beginning of the Bulls' reign over the NBA. The team, with Jordan at the helm, was poised to defend its title and make a run for another. The addition of key players like Ron Harper and the continued development of Scottie Pippen, who was becoming one of the best all-around players in the league, gave the Bulls the depth and balance they had lacked in previous years. But it wasn't just about individual talent. The Bulls had started to understand what made them great as a team. Phil Jackson, their head coach, instilled the triangle offense, a system that emphasized ball movement and unselfish play, which allowed Jordan to be more than just a scorer. It made him a playmaker and a leader. Jordan's transformation into a more complete player was a critical component of the Bulls' success. While he had always been an elite scorer, his passing and court vision began to evolve. He was no longer just a dominant force on offense, he was an orchestrator, able to set up teammates in perfect positions to succeed. Jordan's leadership, both on and off the court, began to shine through even more. He was no longer the young star looking to prove himself, he was the leader of a championship team, setting the tone for every practice, every game. The 1992 season also saw the rise of the Bulls as the league's most dominant team. The defense, led by Pippen's versatility and Jordan's relentless tenacity, became stifling. The team's offense, with the triangle offense running smoothly, allowed Jordan to be the focal point while also empowering his teammates to contribute in meaningful ways. The Bulls finished with a 67-15 record, the best in the league, and they were primed for another championship run. Jordan had already cemented his place as one of the greatest players to ever play the game, but now it was about doing it again, proving that his first title was not a one-time achievement. The 1992 playoffs saw the Bulls face off against the Miami Heat in the first round. The series was a formality for the Bulls, and they swept the Heat 3-0. Jordan's dominance continued in the postseason, and the team's chemistry seemed stronger than ever. But the real test came in the Eastern Conference Finals, where the Bulls would meet the New York Knicks. The Knicks, led by the gritty and tough-minded coach Pat Riley, were a team built on physical play and defense. They had become one of the top teams in the East and were hungry to dethrone the Bulls. The series was hard-fought, but the Bulls were too much for the Knicks. Jordan continued to dominate, with his scoring and leadership leading the way. The series went to 6 games, but the Bulls closed it out with ease, proving that their championship run the year before was no fluke. They were back in the NBA Finals, ready to defend their title. In the finals, the Bulls would face the Portland Trail Blazers, a team led by the dynamic Clyde Drexler. The Blazers had a potent offense and a tough defense, but they were no match for the Bulls. The series started with a bang. In Game 1, Jordan delivered one of the most memorable performances in NBA Finals history. He scored 35 points in the first half alone, showcasing his ability to take over a game with ease. The Blazers had no answer for Jordan, and the Bulls cruised to a 122-89 victory. But Game 1 was just a preview of what was to come. In Game 2, Jordan hit 6 three-pointers, a feat that shocked the basketball world. Known for his scoring ability inside and his mid-range game, Jordan had never been known for his three-point shooting. But in this game, he showcased his full range, further cementing his legacy as one of the most versatile players to ever step onto a basketball court. The Blazers had no answer for him, and the Bulls took a commanding 2-0 series lead. Game 3 saw the Blazers put up a fight, but it was clear they were outmatched. The Bulls were too deep, too disciplined, and too determined. Jordan's leadership was unquestionable, and his performance on the court was everything the Bulls needed to close out the series. They won Game 3 and, ultimately, the Finals 4-2. Jordan was named Finals MVP for the second consecutive year, further solidifying his claim to be the best player in the world. The Bulls had won their second consecutive championship, and Jordan's place as one of the greatest players in NBA history was firmly entrenched. The 1992 championship was not just a validation of Jordan's abilities, it was proof that the Bulls were a dynasty in the making. Jordan had not only proven that his first championship was no fluke, but he had also shown that he could win consistently. But as dominant as Jordan and the Bulls had been, the next season would present new challenges. The NBA had become a league of fierce competition, and while the Bulls were the team to beat, they would have to continue to evolve if they wanted to keep their place at the top. In the summer of 1992, Jordan and the Dream Team took center stage at the Barcelona Olympics. This wasn't just another basketball tournament, this was the moment when the world would see how far the game of basketball had come. The Dream Team, a collection of the best basketball players in the world, including Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Michael Jordan, was a global spectacle. Jordan's leadership on the international stage helped to elevate the profile of the NBA and basketball around the world. The Dream Team didn't just dominate the competition, they were ambassadors for the game, showing the world what was possible when the best came together. As the 1992-93 season began, the Bulls were primed for a third consecutive title. Their roster was intact, and Jordan's confidence was at an all-time high. His scoring continued to be a force, but his leadership had grown even more. The pressure to win was immense, but Jordan thrived under it. He understood that greatness wasn't just about being the best player, it was about elevating his teammates and making them better. Pippen, now fully established as one of the best players in the league, was key to the Bulls' success. His all-around game, leadership, and ability to guard the opposing team's best player made him an invaluable asset. Together, they formed the league's most dominant duo. The 1992-93 season was the culmination of everything Jordan had worked for. He had broken barriers, changed the game, and led the Bulls to the top. The 1993 Finals saw the Bulls face the Phoenix Suns, a talented team led by the legendary Charles Barkley. The series would prove to be another test of Jordan's leadership, but it was one he was more than ready to take on. Game 1 saw the Bulls take a commanding lead, but the Suns fought back. The series would go to 6 games, but in the end, the Bulls prevailed. Jordan once again played a pivotal role, leading the team in scoring, defense, and leadership. With the Bulls' victory, they secured their third consecutive title, making Jordan a three-time champion in as many years. But as much as Jordan had achieved, something within him was beginning to change. The pressure, the expectation, and the toll the game was taking on him began to weigh heavily on his shoulders. As the 1993 season came to a close, Michael Jordan faced a crossroads. He had achieved everything a player could hope for: 3 championships, 3 finals MVPs, and numerous accolades. But his love for the game was beginning to wane. He had accomplished all he had set out to do, and a new chapter in his life was about to unfold. In the aftermath of his third consecutive NBA title in 1993, Michael Jordan's career seemed to have reached its pinnacle. He had led the Chicago Bulls to dominance, solidifying his place in history as one of the greatest players to ever play the game. But despite the glory and accolades, the weight of expectations began to take its toll on Jordan. The constant pressure to win, to be the best, and to carry the Bulls year after year started to feel like an overwhelming burden. In July 1993, tragedy struck Jordan's life. His father, James Jordan Sr., was tragically murdered during a robbery in North Carolina. The loss was devastating for Michael, who had always had an incredibly close bond with his father. James Jordan had been a constant source of support and guidance throughout Michael's life, and his death left a profound emptiness. The grief was palpable, and it became clear that the world of basketball, for all its rewards, was no longer where Jordan found solace. With his world shattered, Michael Jordan made an unexpected decision. In October 1993, at just 30 years old and at the peak of his basketball career, he announced his first retirement from the NBA. It was a move that shocked the sports world, as Jordan was widely regarded as the best player in the league and the driving force behind the Chicago Bulls' success. But for Jordan, the decision was personal. The game that had given him so much had taken away something far more precious. He needed a break from basketball to mourn the loss of his father and to rediscover his sense of purpose. In the months following his retirement, Jordan sought comfort in a new challenge: baseball. His father had always dreamed of him playing the sport professionally, and Michael decided to fulfill that dream by signing a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox in February 1994. He was assigned to the Birmingham Barons, a Double-A affiliate, and began playing baseball in an effort to escape the pressures of basketball and find healing through a different sport. Jordan's transition to baseball was, to put it simply, a work in progress. He had not played competitive baseball since high school, and the challenges he faced were significant. His batting average in 1994 was a modest .202, and while he showed flashes of potential, it was clear that baseball was not the easy path he had once found in basketball. However, what Jordan lacked in baseball skills, he made up for with his trademark work ethic and competitive drive. He spent countless hours improving his swing, refining his game, and doing everything he could to adapt to a sport that was so different from the one that had made him a global icon. While his time in the minor leagues was marked by struggles and challenges, it was also a time of reflection. Baseball offered Jordan an escape from the constant media attention and scrutiny that came with being the best player in the NBA. For the first time in his adult life, he wasn't the center of attention. He was simply another player trying to make it in a sport where he wasn't automatically the best. The humility he gained during his time away from basketball would later influence his approach to leadership and his understanding of the game when he eventually returned to the NBA. Despite his dedication to baseball, Jordan's heart was always in basketball. Even while playing for the Barons, he stayed connected to the game he loved. He worked out on the side, constantly keeping his body in shape, and began to feel that familiar tug toward the court. While baseball had provided him with a brief respite, Jordan realized that his true calling was basketball. In March 1995, after a year and a half away from the NBA, Jordan made his monumental return to the game that had made him a legend. Jordan's comeback was announced with 2 simple words: "I'm back." Those words resonated throughout the sports world, and basketball fans everywhere were ecstatic to see the greatest player of all time return to the court. But when Jordan rejoined the Chicago Bulls in March 1995, he was no longer the player who had left the game. He had spent nearly 2 years away from the league, and although his skills were still intact, his body had changed. He wasn't in the same physical condition he had been in during his prime, and his timing on the court was not what it once was. But as always, Jordan wasn't deterred by these obstacles. He was Michael Jordan, and he knew he could adapt. Jordan's return was far from seamless. The Bulls were a team that had learned to function without him. Scottie Pippen had emerged as a leader, and the team had found success under coach Phil Jackson's system. The Bulls had made it to the Eastern Conference semifinals in 1995, but without Jordan, they lacked the championship pedigree that had defined the team in the previous years. Still, the team's core was strong, and with Jordan back, they had the potential to once again become the powerhouse they once were. In his first game back, Jordan wore the number 45, a nod to his return and his time away from the league. The game was against the Indiana Pacers, and although Jordan was rusty and clearly not in top form, he still managed to score 19 points. While his performance was solid, it was clear that he was still finding his rhythm. His return to full form didn't happen overnight, but it came quickly. Jordan's work ethic was legendary, and within a short amount of time, he was back to his old self. His scoring was as explosive as ever, and his leadership on the court quickly became the centerpiece of the Bulls' success. The 1995-96 season marked the start of a new chapter for Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. With Jordan fully re-engaged in the game, the team began to dominate once again. The addition of players like Ron Harper and Tony Kukoc gave the Bulls the depth they needed, and Jordan's return took them from a playoff contender to a championship favorite. The Bulls finished the regular season with an impressive 72-10 record, the best in NBA history at the time. Jordan was once again the leader of the team, and his presence on the floor made everyone around him better. In the playoffs, the Bulls were virtually unstoppable. They cruised through the first 3 rounds, defeating the Miami Heat, New York Knicks, and Orlando Magic with ease. The stage was set for the finals, where the Bulls would meet the Seattle Supersonics, led by Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp. The series was expected to be a tough test, but the Bulls were operating at a level few could match. Jordan, now fully back to form, led the way. The Bulls defeated the Supersonics 4-2 in the finals, with Jordan winning his 4th Finals MVP award. It was a triumphant return, and for Jordan, it was a reminder of why he had come back in the first place, to prove that he could still be the best, to show that even after stepping away from the game, his greatness would endure. The 1996 championship marked the beginning of another golden era for the Bulls. But it was also the end of Jordan's brief hiatus from basketball. He had stepped away to mourn the loss of his father and to try his hand at baseball, but his return cemented his place as the greatest player to ever play the game. Jordan's journey to this point had been filled with highs and lows, with triumphs and setbacks. But through it all, one thing remained constant: his desire to be the best, his hunger for greatness. The 1996-97 season marked the continuation of the Chicago Bulls' dominance, and Michael Jordan was once again at the center of it all. After his return to the NBA in 1995, the expectations had been high, and Jordan delivered. His 4th NBA title was a testament to his skill, resilience, and the leadership he provided both on and off the court. But as the new season began, there was an underlying question: could the Bulls, and more specifically Jordan, do it again? The target on their backs had grown larger, but if anyone could handle that pressure, it was Michael Jordan. The 1997 season was unique for a number of reasons. Jordan had already secured his place in NBA history, but the task of winning another championship was not going to be easy. The NBA had evolved, and the competition was fiercer than ever. Teams like the Miami Heat, the Indiana Pacers, and the New York Knicks had grown more competitive, and the Western Conference had seen a rise in talent with teams like the Utah Jazz, led by Karl Malone and John Stockton, emerging as legitimate championship contenders. For Jordan, it was all about continuing his level of excellence. He wasn't simply content with his past accomplishments. He was driven by the idea that he could still get better, that he could still achieve more. His competitive fire, which had always been a part of him, was as strong as ever. The 1997-98 Bulls were now not just about Michael Jordan, they were about the team. Scottie Pippen had become a legitimate superstar in his own right, and players like Tony Kukoc, Steve Kerr, and Ron Harper provided the necessary depth to complement Jordan's brilliance. Phil Jackson, the architect of their previous championships, remained the steady hand at the helm, and his triangle offense continued to be the backbone of the Bulls' success. Despite the talent around him, the focus of the 1997-98 season was, as it always had been, Michael Jordan. And Jordan was playing with a chip on his shoulder. While the media and the fans had begun to question if his best years were behind him, Jordan was more than ready to prove them wrong. He took on the challenge of leading the team again, and every night, his performance seemed to remind the world that he was still the best player in the league. Whether it was scoring, passing, or playing defense, Jordan demonstrated that his drive had not dulled with age. In fact, if anything, it had sharpened. As the season progressed, it became clear that the Chicago Bulls were once again the team to beat. Despite a few struggles with injuries and a changing landscape in the NBA, the Bulls finished with a 69-13 record, the best in the league. The Bulls' success wasn't just about Jordan, though. The team's defensive intensity, led by Pippen, and the selflessness of their offense, based on Jackson's triangle system, made them one of the most balanced teams in NBA history. The system allowed Jordan to operate in the ways that best suited him while also enabling his teammates to play key roles. Every player seemed to know their role, and their synergy was evident every time they stepped onto the floor. But even with the Bulls' dominance, there was a growing sense that the end of the dynasty was approaching. Phil Jackson's future with the team was uncertain, and rumors swirled that the Bulls' management would tear the team apart after the season, regardless of how they performed. Jackson had been given a one-year contract, and it was clear that this would be his final season coaching the Bulls. The whispers of change and the pressure of performing in what was to be the final season of the Bulls' historic run only added fuel to the fire that burned inside Jordan. The playoffs began, and the pressure to win another title weighed heavily on the team. The first round saw the Bulls face the Washington Bullets, who had no real answer for Jordan and the Bulls' balanced attack. The Bulls dispatched the Bullets in 3 quick games, and Jordan was once again playing at an elite level, proving that he was far from finished. But even as the Bulls cruised through the first round, there was the constant reminder that this season would be different. It was their last shot to win it all as a team. And Jordan, ever the competitor, was not about to let this opportunity slip away. In the second round, the Bulls faced the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks were a tough, gritty team, but they were no match for the Bulls' experience and depth. Jordan continued his dominant play, scoring when needed and facilitating for his teammates, and the Bulls quickly dispatched the Hawks in a 4-1 series win. The conference finals would be a different challenge altogether. The Miami Heat, led by Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway, had improved over the years, and their physical style of play could pose a challenge to the Bulls. This series would be a test of how much fight was left in the Bulls' aging roster, especially Jordan. Miami pushed the Bulls to the limit, but Jordan's leadership prevailed. Game after game, he showed that his desire to win had not wavered. He fought through the physicality of the Heat's defense, and the Bulls' collective ability to execute on both ends of the floor led them to yet another victory. The Bulls advanced to their 6th consecutive NBA Finals, where they would face the Utah Jazz in what would prove to be an iconic series. The Utah Jazz had been building toward this moment for years. With Malone and Stockton at the helm, the Jazz were one of the best teams in the league and had pushed the Bulls to the brink in previous seasons. This was their time. The Jazz had the talent and the drive, and they were ready to claim their first NBA title. But the Bulls, and Jordan in particular, were determined to prove that the dynasty wasn't over yet. The finals were hard-fought, with each game feeling like a battle. Utah's offense was potent, and the Bulls' defense was tested at every turn. But as the series progressed, it was clear that Jordan had a different mindset. This was his last shot to win it all with the Bulls, and he wasn't going to waste it. The series was tied at 2-2, and it was clear that the next game would be crucial. In Game 5, Jordan put on one of the most legendary performances of his career, despite battling illness and exhaustion. Known as the flu game, Jordan played through severe dehydration and fatigue, scoring 38 points and leading the Bulls to a crucial victory in Utah. His performance in Game 5 was a testament to his willpower and his ability to perform under the most intense pressure. It wasn't just about scoring, it was about his leadership, his will to win, and his ability to carry his team to victory when it mattered most. With a 3-2 series lead, the Bulls returned to Chicago for Game 6. The game was tight, and the Jazz refused to back down. But Jordan, as always, rose to the occasion. With less than a minute left and the game tied, Jordan hit a clutch shot, a jumper from the top of the key, that gave the Bulls a 3-point lead. The Jazz had no answer, and the Bulls won the game 90-86, clinching their 6th NBA championship in 8 years. Jordan was named Finals MVP for the 6th time, cementing his place as the greatest basketball player of all time. As the confetti fell in the United Center, Jordan's legacy was sealed. The Bulls had done it again, and Jordan had proven that he could lead a team to greatness even in the face of uncertainty. But as he celebrated with his teammates, there was a sense of finality in the air. This was the end of the Chicago Bulls dynasty, and Michael Jordan knew that it was time to walk away. The 1997-98 season had been the culmination of everything he had worked for, and as he stood on that court, it was clear that he had left it all on the floor. The era of the Chicago Bulls, led by Michael Jordan, was over, but the legacy of that team and that player would live on forever. The 1998 NBA Finals marked the end of an era, one that had been dominated by Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Their victory over the Utah Jazz in June 1998 secured their 6th championship in 8 years, and it was clear that this would be Jordan's last title with the Bulls. The dynasty was coming to a close, and with it, Jordan's illustrious career with the team. The Bulls' success was built on the back of Jordan's leadership, determination, and unmatched skill, but there was something more to his legacy than just titles. It was the mentality, the unwavering competitive spirit, that had defined him as a player. Jordan's farewell from the Chicago Bulls was a culmination of everything he had achieved over the years, yet it was not without a sense of finality that the team and their fans had to accept that the man who had brought them 6 championships would soon walk away from the game. The 1998 season had been a roller coaster, not just for Jordan, but for the entire team. The Bulls were an aging dynasty, and while they still had the pieces to win, it was clear that the team would soon be dismantled. Coach Phil Jackson's future was uncertain, and key players like Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman had contracts expiring. As the playoffs approached, it was clear that this was a last-chance opportunity for the Bulls to go out on top. For Jordan, this season had a deeper emotional connection. It was not only about winning his 6th title but about making sure his legacy was secure. The challenges were greater than ever. The NBA was evolving, with younger players like Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan emerging as future stars, and the competition from teams like the Indiana Pacers, Miami Heat, and Utah Jazz in the finals was fierce. Despite all this, Jordan remained the focal point of the Bulls' success. His leadership, both on and off the court, was unmatched. Jordan had the ability to elevate his teammates, to make them believe they could win, and that was a quality that defined his greatness. As the playoffs began, the Bulls faced off against the New Jersey Nets in the first round. The series was more of a formality than a true test for the defending champions. Jordan's play remained exceptional, and the Bulls took care of business, sweeping the Nets with relative ease. The real challenge came next in the Eastern Conference semifinals, where they were matched up with the tough and gritty Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets, led by veteran players like Glenn Rice and Muggsy Bogues, had proven themselves to be a competitive team. But even with their physical play and high-energy offense, they were no match for Jordan's intensity and the Bulls' experience. Jordan led the charge in the series, and his clutch performances, combined with Scottie Pippen's all-around brilliance, helped the Bulls clinch a 4-1 victory. The Bulls were once again heading to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they would face the Indiana Pacers, who had become one of the top teams in the East. The Pacers, led by Reggie Miller and a team of hard-nosed, disciplined players, presented a challenge for the Bulls. It was the first time in the Jordan era that the team seemed vulnerable. Miller's sharp shooting and the Pacers' ability to play physical basketball had the potential to disrupt the Bulls' rhythm. The series between the Bulls and Pacers was one of the hardest fought in recent memory. The Pacers pushed the Bulls to the brink, taking the series to 7 games. But in the end, it was Jordan's will and leadership that carried the Bulls through. Game 7 was an emotional battle, and in the final moments, Jordan's ability to rise to the occasion once again shone through. The Bulls won 88-83, advancing to the NBA Finals for the 6th time in 8 years. For Jordan, the pressure was palpable. This was the last chance for the team to win a title together, and the weight of that responsibility was something he carried with grace and determination. The finals were set. The Bulls would face the Utah Jazz, a team led by future Hall of Famers Karl Malone and John Stockton. The Jazz had been knocking on the door of a championship for years, but they had never been able to get past the Bulls in their previous encounters. The rivalry between the two teams had been building, and Utah was hungry for their first NBA title. The Bulls, however, were determined to show that the dynasty was not yet over. Jordan's presence on the court was undeniable. He was playing at a level that was simply above everyone else, and his ability to take over games was unmatched. In Game 1 of the Finals, the Bulls faced adversity early on. The Jazz came out strong, and their offense was clicking. But Jordan remained steady, and in the second half, he and Pippen took control. Despite a valiant effort from the Jazz, the Bulls won the game 84-82. It was clear that Jordan's leadership and experience were going to be crucial in this series. The Jazz didn't back down, and the games that followed were physical and tightly contested. But as the series progressed, it became clear that Utah had no answer for Jordan's intensity. One of the most iconic moments of the finals came in Game 5, where Jordan, despite battling the flu and exhaustion, delivered a performance for the ages. Known as the flu game, Jordan played 44 minutes, scoring 38 points and leading the Bulls to a crucial victory in Utah. Jordan's performance in that game was a testament to his mental toughness. His ability to perform under pressure, even when physically drained, reinforced the idea that Jordan was not just a player but a force of nature, someone who would do whatever it took to win. The Bulls entered Game 6 with a 3-2 series lead, knowing that they were one win away from securing their 6th title. The Jazz weren't going to give up easily, and they pushed the Bulls to the limit. But in the final moments of Game 6, with the game tied and the championship on the line, Jordan once again took control. With 25 seconds left, Jordan hit a jump shot over Utah's Byron Russell, giving the Bulls a 3-point lead and essentially sealing the win. The Bulls went on to win 87-86, clinching their 6th NBA championship. Jordan was named Finals MVP for the 6th time, and the team celebrated as if they knew it was the end of an era. The confetti fell, and Jordan embraced his teammates, knowing that this victory marked the conclusion of one of the greatest dynasties in sports history. The Chicago Bulls had done it again, and Michael Jordan had led them to one final triumph. For Jordan, this championship felt different. It wasn't just about the title, it was about the journey. He had overcome personal tragedy, physical challenges, and the pressure of maintaining greatness year after year. As he held the finals trophy, it was clear that he had nothing left to prove. This was the culmination of everything he had worked for. He had led the Bulls to 6 championships, and now it was time to step away. As Jordan walked off the court for the final time as a Chicago Bull, he knew that his legacy was secure. The dynasty was over, but his impact on the game would last forever. In the years to come, Jordan's influence would continue to shape the game of basketball, inspiring future generations of players to reach for greatness. And for the millions of fans around the world, Michael Jordan's career would remain a shining example of what it meant to be the best, both on and off the court. After Michael Jordan's second retirement in 1999, basketball fans were left in awe of his unparalleled career. 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, and a legacy that had fundamentally changed the game of basketball. What more could he accomplish? Yet, despite all that he had achieved, the basketball world was still uncertain. Was this the final goodbye from the greatest player to ever step on the court? Jordan had already left the game once before, and while it had been an emotional farewell, it wasn't definitive. But this time, his retirement felt different. Jordan had walked away from the sport he had dominated for so many years, and the Chicago Bulls had slowly fallen apart without their leader. But even as the dust settled on Jordan's decorated career, the basketball world couldn't help but wonder if there would be one more chapter to his story. Jordan had retired not once, but twice, and his impact on the sport had not faded. His influence stretched far beyond the court, inspiring countless young athletes who grew up idolizing his competitive spirit, his work ethic, and his never-say-die mentality. His name had become synonymous with greatness, but what if there was more to his story? In 2001, at 38 years old, Jordan made a shocking announcement. After 2 years away from the game, he was coming out of retirement, this time to play for the Washington Wizards. The news was met with mixed reactions. Some were skeptical, questioning whether the aging Jordan could still compete at the level he once did. Others were thrilled, eager to see the legend return to the court. Regardless of the initial doubts, there was no denying that this was a moment that captured the world's attention. Jordan's decision to play for the Wizards was a far cry from the dynasty he had built in Chicago. The Wizards were far from championship contenders, and the team had struggled in the years before Jordan's arrival. This was not about chasing another title or adding to his already unparalleled legacy, it was about a personal challenge. Jordan had always thrived on challenges, whether it was overcoming the Detroit Pistons' defense or learning to trust his teammates in Chicago. This time, he wanted to see if he could still dominate in a different setting, with a team that wasn't built for championships. His return to basketball wasn't just about scoring points. The Wizards were a team in transition, with young players like Jerry Stackhouse, Richard Hamilton, and Kwame Brown, all looking to develop. Jordan's role was both as a player and a mentor. He had the opportunity to impart his knowledge on these young players, teaching them the same lessons about hard work, leadership, and competitive drive that had helped him achieve greatness. Despite being older and less explosive than in his prime, Jordan was still an incredible player. His presence on the court was felt immediately. His ability to score, facilitate, and lead his team was unmatched. In his first season with the Wizards, Jordan was able to put up impressive numbers, averaging 22.9 points per game. His scoring ability was still elite, and his basketball IQ was as sharp as ever. But despite his individual success, the Wizards as a team were not championship contenders. The lack of cohesion and depth hurt the team's chances, and they failed to make the playoffs in both of Jordan's seasons with the Wizards. However, Jordan's return to the court wasn't about proving he could win another title, it was about testing himself and seeing if he could still compete at the highest level. While the Wizards didn't find success in the postseason, Jordan's influence on the team was undeniable. As Jordan's second stint in the NBA continued, his leadership and work ethic were put on full display. His ability to mentor the young players on the team was invaluable. Jordan took on the responsibility of teaching them the ins and outs of the game, showing them how to compete at the highest level. In particular, players like Richard Hamilton and Kwame Brown benefited from Jordan's guidance. Jordan taught them what it meant to be a professional, how to approach the game, and the level of commitment required to reach the top. While the team struggled to reach the playoffs, Jordan's impact was still felt, not just through his play, but through his presence in the locker room. Jordan's performance on the court during the 2001 to 2003 seasons was a testament to his unmatched work ethic and competitiveness. He may have been older, but he was still a force. There were flashes of the old Jordan, his ability to take over games, to sink clutch shots, and to defend at a high level. But it was clear that time had caught up with him. His body, once a machine of athletic perfection, was beginning to show signs of wear. The quickness and agility that had made him so unstoppable in his prime were no longer there. But even with his physical limitations, Jordan still had the mentality of a champion. He played with a sense of urgency that few could match, and his competitive fire never dimmed. Despite his declining physical abilities, Jordan proved that his mind for the game had only gotten sharper. He was still capable of reading the floor, making the right decisions, and elevating his game when it mattered most. There was one particular game during the 2002 to 2003 season against the Charlotte Hornets where Jordan scored 51 points, reminding the world that he could still put up monster numbers when needed. The game was a personal reminder that Michael Jordan was not just the greatest of his era, but one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Off the court, Jordan's return to the Wizards also sparked a renewed interest in the NBA. His presence alone was enough to draw crowds, and his games became national events. The media attention, while intense, was a reminder of how important Jordan had been to the game of basketball. He had turned the sport into a global phenomenon during the 1990s, and even in the twilight of his career, he still commanded the spotlight. While the team's success may have been limited, the impact Jordan had on the game was clear. His return provided a bridge between the past and the future, connecting the legendary era of the 1990s with the new wave of talent that was emerging in the NBA. Jordan's second stint with the Wizards ended in 2003, when he retired for a second time, this time for good. The decision to walk away from the game was not an easy one. Jordan had spent over a decade as the face of the NBA, and his return had been an emotional journey. But after 2 seasons with the Wizards, it was clear that Jordan had given everything he had to the game. The toll it had taken on his body and the challenges of playing in an era where the game had evolved beyond what it had been in his prime were undeniable. Still, as he walked away from basketball once more, there was no regret. Jordan had accomplished everything a player could hope for. In the years following his retirement, Jordan's influence on the game continued. He became a prominent figure in the business world, particularly through his ownership stake in the Charlotte Hornets. He also remained involved in charity work, giving back to the community in ways that were important to him. His iconic Air Jordan brand continued to thrive, becoming a cultural symbol far beyond the world of sports. Though his time on the court had come to an end, Michael Jordan's legacy would live on for generations to come. His impact on the game was immeasurable, and his influence on future players would continue to shape the NBA for years. Jordan was the benchmark by which all future players would be measured, and his name became synonymous with greatness, excellence, and the relentless pursuit of victory. Even in retirement, he remained the standard. The story of Michael Jordan was far from over, and it would forever remain a tale of perseverance, triumph, and unparalleled greatness. The 2000s were a strange time for Michael Jordan. Having retired from the Chicago Bulls for the second time in 1999, his legacy was already solidified as the greatest basketball player to ever live. His 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, and countless accolades seemed to offer a perfect ending. But as the years passed, the question lingered, could Jordan's impact on the game truly be over? Could he walk away from basketball and simply leave it all behind? The answer, it seemed, was no. Michael Jordan, ever the competitor, wasn't done with basketball, even if his body had started to show signs of age. In 2001, Jordan shocked the basketball world when he announced his return to the NBA, this time with the Washington Wizards. The decision came at a time when the NBA was beginning to shift. Teams were getting younger, faster, and more dynamic, and many doubted that a 38-year-old Jordan could still compete at the level that had made him a global icon. But Jordan wasn't coming back to prove something to anyone but himself. The Wizards were in a rebuilding phase, and Jordan was tasked not only with leading the team on the court but also with mentoring the younger players. While it was clear he was no longer in his prime, the competitive fire that had driven him throughout his career had not faded. In fact, it was stronger than ever. Upon his return, Jordan faced immediate challenges. The Wizards, despite having some talented players like Jerry Stackhouse and Rip Hamilton, were not championship contenders. Jordan's physical capabilities had declined. He was no longer the explosive force he had once been, and his ability to play 40 minutes a game was no longer a given. However, the same traits that had made him a transcendent player, his work ethic, his leadership, and his determination, remained intact. Even at 38, Jordan could still dominate a game when necessary. His basketball IQ was second to none, and his ability to make the right play, whether scoring, passing, or defending, was as sharp as ever. What Jordan brought to the Wizards was not just his playing ability but his presence, a sense of confidence that permeated the locker room and spread throughout the entire organization. In his first season with the Wizards, Jordan was still able to put up impressive numbers, averaging 22.9 points per game. While his numbers weren't quite the same as they were during his Bulls days, he was still capable of taking over games. He had an innate ability to control the flow of the game, even if his body wasn't able to perform at the same level. The media scrutinized Jordan's return, questioning his decision to come back at such an age, but he showed everyone that he still had it. It wasn't about being the best player in the league anymore. It was about proving to himself that he could still compete, that he still had the drive to play at the highest level. The Wizards, with Jordan at the helm, showed improvement in the standings, though they were still far from a serious playoff threat. What Jordan provided, however, was invaluable to the younger players on the team. They had the opportunity to learn from the best, to witness firsthand what it meant to be dedicated to your craft and to give everything you had for the game. Jordan's leadership was evident both on and off the court. He took the time to mentor his teammates, working with them individually to improve their games. He would often stay after practices to work on drills, showing the younger players what true commitment looked like. He was still the best in the gym, and that level of dedication rubbed off on everyone. But as much as Jordan was helping the team, the reality was that the Wizards were not yet a title contender. Jordan had returned to a franchise that wasn't built for championships, and the NBA landscape was changing rapidly. The Western Conference, led by teams like the Los Angeles Lakers and the San Antonio Spurs, was full of powerhouse teams that were dominating the league. Still, Jordan's competitive nature wouldn't allow him to settle for mediocrity. He worked tirelessly, putting in the hours, pushing himself and his teammates every single day. While his body was no longer what it used to be, his mind and his heart were still as sharp as ever. Jordan's second season with the Wizards in 2002 to 2003 was marked by more of the same, brilliant individual performances, but still no real team success. He averaged 20 points per game, and despite his age, his performances on the court still had fans in awe. He had moments of brilliance, such as a 51-point game against the Charlotte Hornets, proving that even at 40, he could still perform at a high level. But the Wizards were still not contenders, and Jordan's personal greatness was overshadowed by the team's inability to win consistently. He was, at this point, a player with the heart of a champion surrounded by a team that wasn't ready to make a championship run. As the 2003 season wound down, the inevitable question arose, would this be Jordan's final season in the NBA? At 40 years old, Jordan had nothing left to prove. His legacy was already etched in stone, but he was still driven by the same force that had carried him to 6 championships. The physical toll of playing in the NBA at his age, combined with the lack of a real shot at another title, led Jordan to make the decision to retire once again. In April 2003, Jordan played his final game in the NBA, ending his legendary career for the second time. The final game was an emotional one. It took place in Philadelphia, where Jordan had once again put on a show for the fans who had watched him grow from a young player into an icon. His final appearance was filled with nostalgia and a sense of closure, as fans across the world realized that the end of an era had come. Jordan's time with the Wizards may not have been the fairy tale ending that many expected, but it didn't matter. His career had already been defined by his accomplishments with the Chicago Bulls, and his time with the Wizards was more about improving that, at any age, he could still be a force in the game. After his second retirement, Jordan would not be away from basketball for long. His legacy was larger than just playing the game, it was about shaping the future of basketball. In 2010, Jordan became the principal owner and chairman of the Charlotte Hornets, making history as the first former NBA player to own an NBA team. His influence on the game would continue through his ownership, and he used his platform to further shape the next generation of players. His legacy was no longer just about his ability on the court, but also about the impact he had on the business side of basketball. Though his days on the court were over, Michael Jordan's influence on the game of basketball is undeniable. He is often regarded as the greatest player in NBA history, and his impact transcends the sport. His mentality, his work ethic, and his competitiveness continue to serve as a blueprint for the modern athlete. His return to the Washington Wizards may not have led to another championship, but it demonstrated that the heart of a champion never fades. Jordan's story is a reminder that greatness is not defined by titles alone, but by the will to keep pushing, even when the odds are stacked against you. It was never about being the best. Jordan's pursuit was always about being the greatest version of himself, and that's why his legacy will always endure. Michael Jordan's departure from the NBA in 2003 was the final chapter in an extraordinary story. By then, he had cemented his legacy as the greatest player to ever play the game. His 6 championships, 5 MVP awards, and countless individual accolades were the foundation of a career that had redefined what it meant to be a winner. But as the years passed, Jordan's impact only deepened. He was no longer just a player who captivated the world with his dunk contests and game-winning shots. He had become a symbol of determination, leadership, and excellence. Jordan's career wasn't just about basketball, it was about a mindset, a relentless pursuit of greatness that transcended the sport. Even in retirement, Jordan continued to influence the game. After leaving the Washington Wizards, where he had made one final comeback at age 38, his presence was still felt around the NBA. His decision to retire a second time left fans wondering what more he could have accomplished, but the truth was that Jordan had already done enough to ensure his place in basketball history. He had set a standard that no player would ever truly surpass. In the years following his second retirement, Jordan became a businessman and owner of the Charlotte Hornets, showing the world that his influence extended far beyond the court. Jordan's transition into ownership was a reflection of his legacy. He was the first former NBA player to own a significant stake in an NBA team, and through his leadership, he helped shape the next generation of players. His competitive nature didn't just end with basketball, it moved into the business world, where he applied the same drive and passion that had made him the greatest player to ever play. His vision for the Hornets wasn't just about winning games, it was about creating a culture, building a franchise that could emulate the success he had with the Chicago Bulls. But even though he was now a businessman and not a player, the essence of what made Jordan great was still evident. His mindset, his leadership, and his willingness to push for greatness were present in everything he did. But even as Jordan shifted to new ventures, the basketball world continued to measure greatness by his standards. Players like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and others came after him, but each time their achievements were discussed, Jordan's name was mentioned. He had set the bar. To be the best, players had to strive for what Jordan had achieved. His competitive spirit and drive became a model for athletes in every sport, and his ability to perform under pressure became the template for what it meant to be a champion. Even in retirement, he remained the blueprint for excellence. As the years passed, Jordan continued to be a central figure in sports culture. His brand, Air Jordan, continued to dominate the sneaker world, and his global influence remained a powerful testament to the reach of his impact. His name was synonymous with more than just basketball, it was a symbol of hard work, determination, and perseverance. His legacy had transcended the sport he loved, and it would live on for generations to come. However, as Jordan moved further into retirement, there was always that question: how do you measure a legacy that has already done it all? In a world where athletes are constantly compared to one another, where records are broken and new stars emerge, it can be difficult to find closure when it comes to a career like Jordan's. Yet, for all the debate and discussion about who is the greatest player in NBA history, one thing remained constant: Michael Jordan had set the standard. His legacy wasn't defined by the number of championships he won or the records he broke. It was defined by his mentality, the drive to be better, to push beyond limits, and to never settle for anything less than greatness. Jordan's impact on the game was felt not just in his playing days but in the way he shaped the future of the NBA. Players today still refer to Jordan as the ultimate competitor, the one they aspire to be like. Whether it's the way they approach the game, the level of work they put in behind the scenes, or the hunger to win championships, Jordan's influence remains in every player who has ever laced up a pair of basketball shoes. His name has become synonymous with more than just basketball. It represents excellence, leadership, and a commitment to being the best version of yourself. In many ways, Jordan's career is the story of perseverance. From being cut from his high school basketball team to overcoming the bad boys of Detroit, from the loss of his father to stepping away from the game only to return and win another title, Jordan's journey was one of constant reinvention and resilience. Every time the world thought they had seen the last of him, he came back stronger. His ability to rise above adversity, whether on the court or in his personal life, is what made him not just a champion, but a symbol of determination and hard work. When it comes to the final chapter of Jordan's career, there is no doubt that it was not just about basketball. His legacy goes beyond the titles, beyond the accolades, and beyond the records. What defines Michael Jordan's story is the impact he had on the world, how he inspired countless individuals to dream big and work tirelessly toward their goals. He taught us that greatness doesn't come from talent alone, it comes from the effort you put in, the sacrifices you make, and the belief that you can be the best, even when the odds are against you. As the years continue to pass, Michael Jordan's story will endure. His career will forever be remembered as the standard by which all athletes are measured. Every player who steps onto an NBA court, every young athlete who dreams of greatness, will look to Jordan's career as a guide. His story is one of persistence, of overcoming obstacles, and of striving for perfection in everything he did. And in the end, that is the true measure of greatness. Jordan's legacy is not just about basketball, it's about the mindset of an individual who refused to settle for anything less than the absolute best. He made the impossible possible, and his journey from a young boy in North Carolina to the greatest basketball player the world has ever seen is a testament to the power of belief and hard work. Michael Jordan's story may have ended on the court, but it will live on forever, inspiring future generations to pursue their own greatness. The greatest of all time. And his impact, like his legacy, will never fade.